Welcome to a place where dreams and stories come alive. Tonight, we travel to the quaint village of Thistledown, a peaceful haven nestled between rolling hills and whispering woods. In a small, sunlit cottage, a young writer named Elara embarks on a magical journey that begins with a mysterious quill. Close your eyes and let the gentle music and soothing voice guide you into a restful state. Picture Elara discovering this enchanted quill at an old estate sale, a quill that brings her stories to life. Imagine the warmth of her cozy cottage and the excitement of an adventure unfolding with every word she writes. As you listen to Elara's tale, allow yourself to drift into a serene sleep. Let the magic of knights, dragons, and celestial beings fill your dreams and carry you through the night. Good night, dear friends. May your sleep be peaceful and your dreams be filled with wonder. Chapter 1: The Discovery. In the quaint village of Thistledown, nestled between rolling hills and whispering woods, Elara lived in a small, sunlit cottage that doubled as her sanctuary and writing nook. The world of letters and words had always been her refuge, though success as a writer seemed as distant as the stars twinkling above her humble abode. On a crisp autumn morning, Elara set out to explore the estate sale of a recently departed bibliophile. The advertisement promised rooms filled with dusty tomes and forgotten relics, a siren call for any storyteller. As she wandered through the maze of memories and manuscripts, her eyes caught a glimpse of an ancient mahogany desk tucked away in a dim corner. It beckoned to her, as if hiding secrets only she could unlock. Driven by a mix of curiosity and an unexplained pull, Elara approached the desk. The wood was carved with intricate patterns of vines and stars, worn smooth by time and touch. As she ran her fingers over the surface, she discovered a hidden drawer that seemed to resist the attempts of previous explorers. With a gentle tug, guided by intuition, the drawer gave way, revealing its treasure, a quill of extraordinary appearance. The quill was unlike anything Elara had ever seen. Its shaft shimmered with iridescent colors that changed with the light, and the tip was a lustrous, golden hue that promised tales waiting to be written. It lay upon an old velvet cushion, as if it was waiting all these years for her to find it. Elara hesitated for a moment, aware of the peculiarity of her find. Yet, the allure of the quill was irresistible. As she held it, a warmth spread through her fingers, an energy that pulsed with the beat of her heart. It felt right, as though the quill was meant for her, a thought that both excited and unnerved her. Upon returning home, Alara set the quill on her desk, which was cluttered with papers and books, a testament to her relentless pursuit of a writing career that had yet to begin. The evening stretched before her, filled with the usual solitude and silent keyboards. But tonight was different. Tonight, she had the quill. As the moon climbed high, casting silver beams through her window, Alara dipped the quill into an inkwell and pressed it against a blank page of her notebook. With a deep breath, she began to write. The words flowed effortlessly, spinning a tale of knights and dragons, of daring quests and magical realms. It was as though the quill knew her thoughts, her dreams, and brought them to life with an ease she had never experienced before. Hours slipped by unnoticed, and when Alara finally set the quill down, her eyes heavy with sleep, she felt a satisfaction she hadn't known in years. Her story was complete, a creation that felt more real than anything she had written before. That night, Alara drifted into sleep with the quill by her side, her dreams filled with the adventures she had penned. Little did she know, as the moon watched over her small cottage, that her words had taken on a life of their own. Dawn greeted Alara with the usual chorus of birds and a gentle breeze rustling the curtains. But as she stirred from her sleep, a series of strange noises from her living room drew her attention. Cautious, yet curious, she tiptoed towards the source, only to freeze in astonishment at the scene before her. In her living room, larger than life and bewilderingly real, stood a knight clad in shining armor and a dragon perched casually on her couch. Both characters she had created in her story the night before. They seemed just as confused to be there as she was to see them. As the reality of her situation dawned on her, Alara realized that the quill in her possession was no ordinary writing tool. It was something far more magical, far more powerful. And it was then, in that moment of surreal realization, that her adventure truly began. Alara stood frozen, her eyes wide as she surveyed the knight and dragon that had sprung from her own written words. The knight, whom she had named Sir Cedric, adjusted his armor with a clank and a grunt, his gaze sweeping the modest room as if expecting a battlefield. The dragon, smaller than one might expect, but no less imposing with scales that shimmered like embers, cocked its head, smoke puffing from its nostrils as it peered curiously at Alara. "Good lady," Sir Cedric began, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to resonate with the very walls of the cottage. "Where are we? Last I recall, we were about to enter the cave of Eldoria to reclaim the Starfire gem from the clutches of the sorcerer Mulduin. voice, barely a whisper, managed to respond. "You were in a story I wrote you last night." Her mind raced, trying to grasp the surreal reality that her creations were alive, breathing, and conversing with her in her own living room. The dragon, which she had whimsically named Spark, let out a snort that sent a small plume of smoke into the air. "Written, you say? Fascinating." Despite its fearsome appearance, its voice was surprisingly gentle, tinged with curiosity rather than menace. Alara took a cautious step forward, her initial shock giving way to a writer's inherent curiosity about her characters. "Yes, I wrote about you both. You were just fiction, characters in my story. This shouldn't be possible." Sir Cedric sheathed his sword, which he had instinctively drawn upon appearing, and looked around with a bemused expression. "Yet here we are, as real as you," he said, examining his hands as if seeing them for the first time. As the morning sun filtered through the windows, casting light on the unbelievable scene, a serene glow began to form in the corner of the room. It solidified into a figure, tall and clothed in flowing robes that shimmered with a celestial light. The figure stepped forward, the very air around him seeming to hum with energy. "I am Seraphiel, guardian of the Quill of Creation," the figure announced, his voice echoing with a divine resonance. "And you, Alara, have been chosen by the quill as its new wielder." Alara, still grappling with the morning's revelations, felt her knees weaken. "Guardian, Quill of Creation. I don't understand. How is any of this real?" Seraphiel approached, his presence calming. "The quill you found is no ordinary artifact. It possesses the power to bring stories to life, to alter realities, and to create anew. It chose you for your pure heart and vivid imagination. But with great power comes great responsibility, and you must learn to wield it wisely." "Why me?" Alara's voice trembled, not just from fear, but from the awe of the divine mission suddenly thrust upon her. Because true creativity is a rare gift, and it needs a guardian who respects its depth and potential, Seraphiel replied. He glanced at Sir Cedric and Spark. "Your creations, though born from fantasy, now have lives, thoughts, and wills of their own. They will need your guidance as much as you will need theirs." Alara took a deep breath, absorbing the weight of her new reality. "What am I supposed to do?" "You must learn the extent of the quill's powers. There are others who seek to use its power for darker purposes," Seraphiel said, his gaze turning grave. "A malevolent force, a demon named Morax, has sensed its activation and will come for it. You must be prepared." The knight stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Then we shall protect her," Sir Cedric declared, his tone resolute. "And I," added Spark, with a determined flick of its tail, "shall lend my fire to her cause." Elara looked between her creations and the celestial guardian, feeling the stirrings of courage. "Then let's begin," she said, her voice firm. "Teach me, guide me, for I have stories yet to write, and it seems worlds to save." As Seraphiel nodded in approval, the morning light grew brighter, and Elara felt the quill's power pulse in her grasp, ready to pen the next chapter of her extraordinary journey. As the golden morning light spilled over the cottage, lending warmth and a surreal glow to the room, Seraphiel, the guardian angel, began to elucidate the path that lay before Elara. "The first step," he said, his voice as calming as a gentle stream, "is to seek the wisdom of Aldrich, the wise old man. He has watched over the realms of creation and has guided many wielders of the quill." Elara, with her newfound companions, Sir Cedric and Spark, the dragon, prepared for the journey. The thought of stepping outside her quiet life, beyond the confines of her cottage and into the unknown, made her heart flutter with a mix of fear and excitement. Yet, the determination to master the quill and prevent it from falling into malevolent hands spurred her on. The group set out at dawn, leaving the familiar behind. The world outside Elara's door was not the one she knew. The landscape seemed to shift and change, as if it was rearranging itself. Trees whispered secrets when they passed, and the wind seemed to urge them forward with gentle nudges at their backs. As they traveled, Seraphiel explained more about the quill of creation. It was forged by the celestial crafters, beings of pure creation and imagination, as a tool to aid in the maintenance of balance between reality and fantasy. Its power is boundless, limited only by the wielder's own creativity and will. The journey was long, taking them through enchanted forests where the trees bore fruits of silver and gold, across rivers that sang old lullabies, and over mountains that touched the sky. At last, they arrived at a secluded glen, where the trees parted around a small, ancient cottage that seemed as old as time itself. Here lived Aldrich, the wise old man. The air around his home was thick with the scent of pine and old parchment. As they approached, the door creaked open, revealing a figure as ancient as the cottage itself. Aldrich's eyes, bright and sharp beneath bushy white brows, twinkled with curiosity and knowledge. "Ah, the new guardian of the quill," he said, his voice crackling like dry leaves. "I have been expecting you, Elara." Elara stepped forward, her companions by her side. Chapter 2: The Mischievous Dwarf. The morning brought with it a crisp breeze and the scent of pine and earth as the sun cast its first light over the horizon. Ilara and her companions broke camp with efficient teamwork, each member attending to their tasks with a silent, shared understanding of the journey ahead. Physic, in particular, buzzed with a lively energy, his small frame darting about as he packed and planned, his beard a flurry of motion. As they set off, the path wound through a dense forest, where the light played tricks through the leaves, and the air hummed with the unseen life of the woods. Physic took the lead, his steps sure and light, almost dancing over roots and rocks. This way, through the whispering woods, he called back to them, his voice a mix of excitement and caution. Ilara followed closely, her hand gripping the quill safely tucked into her belt. The forest seemed alive, aware of their presence, its whispers more like murmurs of curiosity. "Why do they call it the Whispering Woods?" she asked, her voice low, almost in reverence to the surrounding beauty. Physic glanced back, a mischievous glint in his bright eyes. "Ah, they say the trees here know all the secrets of the land. They whisper them to each other and to those who know how to listen." He tapped the side of his nose knowingly. "And sometimes they guide or misguide, depending on their mood." The group's journey through the forest was uneventful at first, but as they ventured deeper, the atmosphere thickened. The whispers grew louder, and the path less clear. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a net dropped from the trees, ensnaring Seraphiel and lifting him into the air. At the same moment, hidden trenches opened beneath Ilara and Sir Cedric, sending them tumbling into dark, leaf-covered pits. Ilara's heart raced as she landed with a soft thud on a bed of moss. She was unhurt, but shaken. Above her, she could hear Physic's laughter ringing through the air. "A test, my friends, a test of awareness and agility," he shouted down to them. Sir Cedric, who had managed to land on his feet with the grace of a cat, looked up, amusement mingling with irritation. "And what, pray tell, have we learned from this misadventure, Master Dwarf?" Physic's face appeared over the edge of the pit, his beard spread in a wide grin. "That, even in the company of an angel and a knight, it's wise to watch your step." With a flick of his wrist, Physic released a rope, and Seraphiel was lowered gently to the ground, his wings unfurling as he touched down. Another rope was thrown to Ilara and Sir Cedric, and soon the group was reunited on the forest path. "This was a lesson, wasn't it?" Ilara asked, brushing leaves from her hair, her earlier annoyance fading to curiosity. "Indeed," Physic nodded, his expression serious now. "In our journey, not all threats will be as clear or as kind. We must be vigilant, prepared for anything. he added, his tone lighter. "It's always good to have a bit of fun." Alara couldn't help but smile. "Well, I suppose it's better to learn this lesson now rather than later." "Thank you, Physic." The dwarf bowed dramatically. "At your service, Lady Alara." Their journey resumed with renewed alertness and a lighter mood. The morning's incident, a reminder of the challenges they might face, both seen and unseen. As they walked, the whispering of the trees seemed less ominous and more like a chorus of ancient songs, guiding them, testing them, and perhaps, in their own way, blessing their quest. After their playful yet enlightening ordeal in the Whispering Woods, Alara and her companions emerged into a clearing that seemed touched by magic. The sun hung high, its rays filtering through a canopy of vibrant green, casting patterns on the soft earth below. Here, Alara decided, would be a perfect place to practice the art of wielding the quill of creation. Physic gathered various items from the surrounding area, twigs, stones, and leaves, and placed them before Alara. "Let's see what new tales you can weave with these simple pieces," he suggested with a wink. Alara took a deep breath, her hand hovering over the objects. She then picked up the quill, dipping it into an inkwell filled with ink that shimmered like liquid starlight. "Remember," Seraphiel advised, standing close, his voice a soothing whisper. "Imagine vividly, think clearly, and guide your creations with purpose." Alara nodded, closing her eyes briefly to center her thoughts. When she opened them again, they sparkled with determination. She began to write, her words flowing smoothly onto a blank scroll that Physic had provided. As she described a tiny, enchanted forest within the borders of the clearing, her words took form. Miniature trees sprouted from the ground, growing rapidly but remaining small, perfectly proportioned, as if in a fairy's garden. Sir Cedric watched in awe. "Remarkable," he muttered, his eyes reflecting the tiny glimmers of light that danced around the miniature forest. "I need to learn, Aldrich. I need to understand how to use the quill properly. There's a demon, Morax, who seeks to take it from me." Aldrich nodded sagely, beckoning them inside, where walls lined with books from floor to ceiling awaited them. The air was heavy with magic and mystery. "The quill," he began, settling into a chair that seemed to form itself out of the roots of the cottage, "is not just a tool of creation. It is a conduit of power, connecting the physical to the metaphysical, the real to the imagined. You must not only master its abilities, but also understand its essence." He spent hours discussing the nature of reality, the fabric of creation, and the delicate balance that must be maintained. To wield the quill is to hold reality in the palm of your hand, Aldrich warned, his gaze intense. But remember, every story you write with the quill becomes a part of this reality. You must tread carefully, for stories can bring joy and wonder, but also chaos and destruction. Elara listened, absorbed every word, feeling the weight of her responsibility deepen. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with strokes of orange and pink, Aldrich handed her a small, leather-bound book. "This is a guide," he said, his eyes twinkling once more. "Use it wisely, and remember, the stories we love best do live in us forever. So, be careful which ones you bring to life." With a new sense of purpose, Elara thanked the wise old man. As she stepped out of the cottage, the world didn't seem quite as daunting anymore. With the guide in her hand and her guardians by her side, she was ready to face whatever challenges the quill and Morax might bring. Under the fading light of the sun, Elara and her companions set up a small camp just outside Aldrich's enchanted dwelling. The air was cool and crisp, and a small fire crackled and popped, casting a warm glow over their faces. They huddled around the flames, each lost in thought over the day's revelations and the journey ahead. Seraphiel, his wings folded neatly behind him, broke the silence. Understanding the quill's nature is vital, but knowing its history will prepare you for the challenges that lie ahead. His eyes, glowing softly by the firelight, were fixed on Elara, encouraging her. Elara nodded, her mind still reeling from the depth of Aldrich's teachings. She opened the leather-bound guide he had given her, its pages old and yellowed, filled with intricate handwriting and sketches. Aldrich spoke of balance, she said, tracing her fingers over the words. That for every joy a story brings, there could be unintended consequences. Sir Cedric, who had been quietly polishing his armor, looked up. It's like every quest I've undertaken. Every victory came with its trials. Every triumph, its sacrifices. Physic, the mischievous dwarf who had joined their group as they left Aldrich's cottage, chuckled from his spot across the fire. And every treasure its traps, he added, his eyes twinkling with a mix of humor and wisdom. It's the same with your quill, lass. It's a powerful treasure, all right. Powerful treasures always come with hefty traps. Elara smiled, appreciating the dwarf's straightforward wisdom. Aldrich mentioned the celestial crafters, she continued, turning a page to reveal a drawing of celestial beings weaving light and shadow into creation. He said they forged the quill as a tool to aid in their crafting of worlds, giving it to mortals who they deemed worthy of such a gift. The history of the quill is intertwined with the history of creation itself, Seraphiel explained. Each wielder has added to its legacy. Some tales were filled with light, others shadowed by darkness. The balance you wield will define the nature of your stories. As the night deepened, Alara felt the weight of her role. She wasn't just a guardian of a powerful artifact. She was a keeper of balance, a creator whose words could tip the scales of reality. The conversation shifted to Morax, the demon who sought the quill for his malevolent purposes. Morax was once a guardian like me, Seraphiel revealed, his voice low. But he was corrupted by the desire to rewrite not just stories, but the very essence of life and death. Alara absorbed every word, understanding that her adversary was no mere villain, but a fallen guardian with knowledge and power comparable to Seraphiel's. How do we prepare for someone who knows as much as you do? She asked, the fire reflecting in her determined eyes. With wisdom, courage, and a clear heart, Seraphiel answered. Morax may know the quill's powers, but he does not understand its heart. That is where you will outmatch him. Physic snorted, and with a bit of dwarven cunning, we'll set traps of our own, he said, already scheming. The night passed with plans being made, stories shared, and the bonds between the companions strengthening. Alara felt a profound connection to the world around her, to the stories she had yet to write. Next, Alara wrote of a small brook, its waters clear and filled with magical fish that glowed with an inner light. No sooner had she written the words than a cheerful gurgle sounded, and water began to flow through the tiny forest, weaving between the trees and creating a natural harmony that filled the clearing with life. Physic clapped his hands, delight evident on his face. Look at that. You're getting the hang of it, lass. Encouraged by her success, Alara's next creation was more ambitious. She described a creature of the woods, a guardian sprite named Leary, who would protect the miniature forest and all who dwelt within it. As her quill crafted the final flourish, a gentle wind picked up, and a figure materialized, small and delicate, with wings that shimmered like dewdrops in sunlight. The sprite bowed gracefully to Alara, speaking in a voice that was like the tinkling of tiny bells. Thank you, Creator. I am Leary, at your service. Alara responded, her voice filled with wonder. Guard well, Leary, and ensure peace in your realm. As the sprite took to her duties, flitting about her new home, Alara turned to her companions, her expression a mix of joy and awe. I can't believe it works like this. It feels like dreaming, but everything is real. Seraphiel nodded, his expression proud. You are learning well, Alara. But remember, each creation has consequences, and maintaining balance is key. Your creations here are light and good, but in other circumstances, you must be wary of summoning what you may not foresee. Alara acknowledged his words with a serious nod. I understand. Like any power, it must be used wisely. Sir Cedric stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. And you will not do it alone. We are here, every step of the way. The group spent the rest of the day experimenting and learning. Alara, guided by her friends, tested the limits of the quill. Each successful creation boosting her confidence. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the magical clearing, Alara felt a newfound respect for her role as the quill's guardian. She also understood that the adventure was only just beginning, and challenges lay ahead that would test her strength and creativity even further. As Alara grew more proficient with the quill of creation, her companions remained vigilant, aware that the beauty and tranquility of their current endeavors could not mask the dangers ahead. Their concerns were well-founded. Far away in a dimly lit chamber, lined with obsidian and filled with the acrid scent of brimstone, the demon Morax brooded over his plans. Morax, his form shifting between the shadows, peered into a dark pool that mirrored the activities of those he sought to destroy. The surface rippled, then cleared, showing Alara practicing with the quill. His eyes narrowed, a deep growl rumbling in his throat. So, the new guardian grows in strength, he muttered, his voice like the crack of thunder in a closed room. It is time to hasten my plans. With a wave of his hand, the image in the pool shifted, revealing a legion of shadowy figures, his minions, waiting for his command. Go, he commanded, his tone leaving no room for disobedience. Find the girl and her protectors. Bring me the quill, or do not return at all. As the minions dispersed into the ether, Morax turned his attention back to the pool, his thoughts dark as the abyss. He knew the power of the quill well, having once been a guardian himself. The temptation to rewrite reality, to bend it to his will, had been too great, leading to his fall from grace. Now, consumed by a desire for revenge and control, he sought to claim that power once more. Meanwhile, back in the clearing, Alara and her friends remained unaware of the imminent danger. The day had been productive, filled with lessons and laughter. As night fell, Seraphiel suddenly stiffened, his celestial senses alerting him to the shift in the air. Something approaches, he announced, his voice tense. Alara gripped the quill tighter, her earlier joy replaced by a surge of adrenaline. What is it? She asked, standing back to back with Sir Cedric. "Foes," replied Physic, his demeanor shifting to one of readiness, his usual mirth gone. He drew 2 small axes from his belt, spinning them expertly. Seraphiel extended his wings, creating a barrier of light around the group. Morax has sent his minions. They are here for the quill, he explained, his eyes scanning the darkening woods. No sooner had he spoken than shadowy forms emerged from the trees, their eyes glowing red, their intentions clear. Alara felt a chill down her spine, but steadied her resolve. She wasn't just fighting for her life, but for the integrity of countless realities that could be affected by the quill. The battle began with Sir Cedric charging forward, his sword clashing against the nearest shadow. Physic darted beneath the larger foes, his axes a blur as he protected Alara's flanks. Seraphiel's light proved a formidable weapon, searing the darker entities, forcing them to recoil. Alara, realizing that she could use the quill, began to write in the air, words forming quickly under her whispered breath. She crafted creatures of light and fire, guardians that sprang to life and joined the fray, turning the tide with their luminescent power. The minions, overwhelmed by the unexpected resistance, began to retreat, disappearing into the shadows from whence they came. Breathing heavily, Alara watched them go, her heart pounding with the rush of battle. "We have won, for now," Seraphiel said, his voice calm but grave. "But this is only the beginning. Morax will not give up so easily." Alara nodded, feeling the weight of the quill in her hand. "Then we will be ready for him. Whatever it takes," she declared, her voice resolute. As the group settled back into their camp, keeping watchful eyes on the surrounding darkness, Alara felt a mix of fear and courage. She knew that Morax's awareness of her power meant he would strike again, but she also knew she wasn't alone. With her friends by her side and the quill in her hand, she was ready to face whatever came next. After the encounter with Morax's minions, the group was more cautious, realizing that the demon's awareness of their location and capabilities would only intensify his efforts. They broke camp at dawn, deciding that staying mobile would be their best defense against a foe who could strike from the shadows at any moment. As they ventured through a dense thicket, the atmosphere thickened with a palpable tension. Alara clutched the quill of creation close, her other hand on the hilt of a small dagger that Sir Cedric had insisted she carry. "We must reach the sanctuary of the seers," Seraphiel advised, his wings occasionally fluttering with urgency. "There, we can seek guidance and perhaps shield ourselves from Morax's prying eyes." The path to the sanctuary was fraught with dangers, not all of them for Morax. The land itself seemed to sense the upheaval that the pursuit of the quill brought with it. Earthquakes split open the ground with roars of unrest, and rivers overflowed their banks, as if trying to cleanse the land of the conflict that brewed. Physic, ever alert and agile, led the way, his eyes scanning for signs of traps or followers. "We're not alone," he murmured during a brief pause, his voice barely above a whisper. "Tracks here, fresh and hurried, like they're circling around to cut us off." Sir Cedric drew his sword, his face set in a grim line. "Then let's not make it easy for them. Elara, stay in the middle. Physic, scout ahead. Seraphiel, can you cover our flanks?" Seraphiel nodded, and with a graceful assent, he took to the air. His celestial light dimmed to avoid drawing attention. The journey became a tense game of cat and mouse, with the group often doubling back or taking sudden detours to confuse their pursuers. Their efforts to evade capture led them through a shadowy valley shrouded in mists that whispered secrets. Elara felt each whisper as a chill along her spine, her imagination feeding her fear. It was here that the chase reached a perilous peak. Out of the mists, Morax's minions surged like shadows, coalescing into form, their numbers greater than before, their forms more terrifying. The battle was swift and fierce. Sir Cedric met the charge with steel and shout, his blade a silver arc in the dim light. Physic weaved between the legs of larger foes, his axes finding the shadow's weaknesses. Seraphiel's light flared, blinding and burning their attackers. But the minions were relentless. Elara, desperate to protect her friends and the quill, took a deep breath and began to write in the air, her words forming barriers of light and pits of illusion to trap and confuse their enemies. Her control over the quill had grown, and with it, her ability to shape the battlefield. Despite their efforts, the sheer number of attackers began to overwhelm them. It was only when Elara, in a moment of sheer instinct, wrote a massive gust of wind into existence, sweeping many of the minions into the air and scattering them like leaves, that they found a chance to escape. Breathless and weary, the group used this moment to plunge deeper into the valley, where the mists grew even thicker, hiding their passage. They did not stop moving until the valley was far behind them, and the threat, for the moment, seemed less immediate. As they settled in a hidden grove, the weight of the day's events pressed heavily on Elara. She leaned against a tree, her chest heaving with exertion and fear. Sir Cedric approached, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You did well," he said softly. We're still here because of you." Alara looked up at her companions, their faces etched with fatigue, but also with fierce determination. "We can't keep running forever," she said, her voice steady despite her weariness. "We need to find a way to end this." Seraphiel, landing beside them, his light now a gentle glow, nodded. "And we will," he assured her. "The sanctuary of the seers is close. There, we will find our path." Gathering their strength, the group prepared for the next leg of their journey, knowing that each step took them closer to a confrontation with Morax himself. The journey to the sanctuary of the seers was fraught with peril, but as they approached, the landscape transformed. The air grew crisp, and the path was lined with ancient stones, carved with runes that shimmered under the touch of Seraphiel's light. "These are old wards," Seraphiel explained, his voice echoing slightly in the open air. "They protect the sanctuary from dark forces. Morax's minions will not easily breach these defenses." The sanctuary itself was nestled in a valley surrounded by towering cliffs. At its center stood an ancient temple, its stones worn smooth by time and weather, yet it exuded a sense of timeless strength. Alara felt a wave of calm wash over her as they crossed the threshold, the chaos of the chase fading into a distant echo. Inside, the air was filled with the scent of sage and myrrh, and soft lights floated near the ceiling, casting a gentle glow over the seers who awaited them. The seers, robed in garments of deep blue and silver, greeted them with quiet nods. Their leader, an elderly woman with eyes as clear as crystal, stepped forward. "Welcome, Alara, guardian of the quill. We have awaited your coming." Alara bowed, feeling the weight of her responsibility settle upon her shoulders once more. "I seek your wisdom," she said. "Morax pursues me, and I fear for the worlds that could be undone by his wrath." The lead seer, named Mirella, gestured for them to sit around a circular table where a map of the realms lay spread out. "The battle with Morax is as much about wits as it is about will," Mirella began, her voice soft, yet carrying an undeniable authority. "He knows you are learning to master the quill, and he will try to exploit your doubts and fears." Sir Cedric leaned in, his brow furrowed. "We've faced his minions, but Morax himself is a different matter. How do we prepare for a confrontation with him?" Mirella turned to the map, pointing to a location marked by a dark stain. "Morax draws his strength from a place of corruption, where he has twisted reality to his desire. You must confront him there, in his own domain, where he believes himself strongest." Alara felt a chill at the thought, but she knew it was the path they must take. "And the quill?" she asked. How can I use it to counter his power? Morella smiled, a glint of something fierce in her gaze. The quill creates, but it can also unmake. You must write the truths that Morax denies, the hopes he fears. Your words will be your weapons. Physic, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up. And what of traps? Morax is cunning. The paths to his lair are many and treacherous, Morella replied. But with the right guidance, you can navigate them. We will provide you with runes that can shield and mislead, but they will only last so long. The discussion continued into the night, each member of the group contributing their thoughts and strengths to the plan. As dawn approached, Alara took a moment to step outside. She gazed up at the stars, their light steady and clear. A sense of peace filled her, not from the absence of danger, but from the knowledge that she was not alone in her fight. When she returned, the group was ready. They had a plan, a direction, and a newfound resolve. Let's bring an end to this, Alara declared, her voice resolute. With the seer's blessings and the runes they provided, Alara and her companions set out from the sanctuary, their hearts braced for the confrontation ahead. They knew the battle would test them all, but together, they believed they could restore balance and ensure that the quill would remain a force for good. Leaving the sanctuary of the seers, the group felt an amalgam of anticipation and trepidation, knowing that their next steps would lead them directly into the heart of darkness, controlled by Morax. Their journey was no longer one of evasion, but of confrontation. The seers had provided them with runes that hummed softly in their pockets, each one a tiny beacon of hope and protection. The landscape grew bleaker as they neared Morax's realm, the skies turning a heavy, oppressive gray, and the earth beneath their feet cracking with the strain of corrupted magic. Trees twisted into grotesque shapes, their branches clawing at the air as if in pain. Physic, always light-footed, moved with unusual gravity, his axes ready at his side. Sir Cedric's armor, blessed by the seers, glinted with a faint blue light, a stark contrast to the surrounding gloom. Seraphiel's wings were folded tightly against his back, conserving his energy for the battle he knew was coming. As they approached a narrow pass leading into the valley of Morax's domain, Alara felt the quill pulse against her side, its energy reacting to the dark magic that saturated the air. She took a deep breath, reaching into her bag to touch the runes, drawing comfort from their steady pulse. "Remember," Seraphiel whispered, his voice barely audible over the howling wind that swept through the pass. "Morax is a master of deception. Trust in what you know to be true, not what you see." The first of Morax's traps was deceptively simple. Illusions of their deepest fears materialized before them, attempting to turn them back. Alara saw pages of her books burning, the ashes scattering in the wind, symbolizing failure and loss. Sir Cedric faced a phantom of himself, aged and defeated, a knight forgotten by time. Physic confronted a vision of his underground home, collapsed and sealed, his people trapped forever. Each member of the group pressed forward, their resolve hardened against the phantoms. Using the runes, they dispelled the illusions, revealing the path ahead. The valley floor was a vista of desolation, with a fortress of black stone at its heart. Here, Morax awaited, his form shifting between that of a man and a darker, more demonic presence. As they entered the courtyard of the fortress, he greeted them with a chilling smile. "Welcome, Alara, guardian of the quill. You've come far, but it is futile. The quill will be mine," Morax intoned, his voice echoing against the stone. Alara stepped forward, the quill in her hand. "It will never serve you," she declared, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. The confrontation that ensued was both a battle of wills and of physical might. Morax unleashed spells of corruption and decay, turning the ground beneath them to sludge, the air around them to poison. Alara countered with creations of purity and strength, her words weaving barriers of light and creatures of radiant energy. Sir Cedric and Physic engaged Morax's lesser minions, their blades a blur of motion. Seraphiel used his celestial light to protect and heal, his presence a beacon for his companions. The climax of the battle came when Morax, realizing he was losing, attempted a final, desperate ploy. He conjured a massive beast, a creature of nightmare, born from the darkest corners of fear. Alara, drawing on every reserve of strength, wrote a single word in the air with the quill, imbued with all her hope and courage. "Dissolve." The word glowed like a star, and as it touched the beast, the creature began to disintegrate, its form collapsing into shadow and mist. Morax, weakened and furious, recoiled as his creation fell apart. "We are not done yet," Alara said, advancing towards him. "This ends now, Morax." Cornered and defeated, Morax vanished in a cloud of dark smoke. His threat ended for now. But Alara knew this was only the beginning of her guardianship. She had saved reality this time, but the quill's power was not something that could be put away. It demanded vigilance. As they left the dark valley, the skies began to clear, and Alara felt the weight of her responsibility as guardian of the quill settle around her shoulders like a mantle. She was ready to carry it with her friends by her side. The battle with Morax left the valley shrouded in silence, the echoes of their clash still ringing off the stone walls and the once corrupted ground. The air, previously thick with the stench of decay, began to clear as Alara used the quill of creation to mend the scars left by the demon's influence. Around her, the landscape responded. Where there had been blight, green shoots now sprouted, coaxed into life by Alara's gentle words, written into the air with care. Trees straightened, their branches shedding the twisted forms like a cloak, leaves unfurling toward the sunlight that now reached the valley floor. Her companions watched in quiet reverence as Alara walked through the valley, the quill a steady presence in her hand. Sir Cedric, who had seen many wonders in his time, found a new sense of hope in the restoration. Physic, ever the practical one, assisted by replanting and rebuilding using both his strength and his knowledge of the earth. Seraphiel, whose light had been essential in their victory, now focused his energies on healing those lands that had been wounded deepest by Morax's rule. The balance is returning, he noted, his voice filled with a quiet satisfaction. But it will take time and care to fully heal. Alara felt each word she wrote take root, not just in the ground, but within her. This act of restoration was also a learning process, a way to understand the depth of her responsibilities as the guardian of the quill. Each stroke of the quill, each crafted word brought not only life, but a promise to protect and nurture. As they progressed, the group reached the heart of the valley where the corruption had been strongest. Here, the damage was more severe, the remnants of Morax's magic clinging stubbornly to the rocks and the withered plants. Alara paused, sensing the resistance, and knew this would be her greatest challenge yet. Drawing a deep breath, she began to write more deliberately, her words weaving complex patterns in the air, glowing lines intertwining around the stubborn shadows. She wrote of renewal and growth, of rain to wash away sorrow and sun to warm the chilled earth. The words spun around her, a dance of creation against destruction. Slowly, the shadows dissolved, the ground softened, and life returned. Wildflowers burst into bloom, spreading a carpet of color across the valley, a testament to resilience and rebirth. Trees bore new leaves, and a fresh spring bubbled up from where the ground had once been parched. When the task was done, Alara stepped back, her face aglow with the accomplishment, but also marked by fatigue. The quill's power was immense, and while it brought life, it also demanded much from its wielder. Sir Cedric approached her, placing a gauntleted hand on her shoulder. "You've done what many would have believed impossible impossible," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Physic, wiping a smudge of dirt from his brow, grinned. "And you made it look easy, lass." Seraphiel looked around at the transformed valley, his eyes reflective. "This is only the beginning of your journey, Alara. The quill has found a worthy guardian." As they prepared to leave the valley, now teeming with life and hope, Alara felt a profound connection not only to the world around her, but also to her own inner strength. She had rewritten desolation into beauty, despair into hope, using nothing but her imagination and the power of the quill. The journey back to the world outside the valley was quiet, contemplative. Alara knew that many challenges still awaited her, but with the quill in her hand and her faithful friends by her side, she felt ready to face whatever came next, writing her story, one word at a time. As the group made their way back to the village of Thistledown, the world seemed to breathe a sigh of relief along with them. The path was familiar, yet everything appeared more vivid, touched by the profound changes Alara had wrought with the quill of creation. The air was fresher, the colors brighter, and even the villagers greeted them with a newfound joy that resonated deeply within the community. Upon their return, Alara found herself a hero, celebrated not just for defeating a great evil, but for restoring balance to a world teetering on the brink of chaos. Tales of her bravery and the miracles she penned spread far and wide, drawing curious visitors and aspiring writers to Thistledown, each eager to witness the power of the quill. Yet, amidst the celebrations, Alara felt a quiet tug at her heart, a reminder of the responsibility that still weighed heavily on her shoulders. The quill was a powerful artifact, one that required not only strength to wield, but wisdom and foresight. It had chosen her, but she knew that her time as its guardian was but a chapter in a much longer saga. As spring gave way to summer, Alara spent her days teaching others about the power of words and stories. She opened a school of writing in Thistledown, where she shared not only the technical skills of storytelling, but also the ethical implications of creating worlds and characters with the quill. One day, as she was walking through the newly rejuvenated woods near her cottage, Alara came across a young girl no older than 10, writing stories in the dirt with a stick. The child's imagination was vivid, her tales filled with adventure and wonder. Watching her, Alara felt a familiar pulse, a recognition that resonated with the same intensity as when she first discovered the quill. Approaching the young girl, Alara introduced herself and asked about the stories she was creating. The child, named Lila, looked up with bright, eager eyes, sharing her dreams of worlds where magic was real and every creature had a voice. Over the following weeks, Alara mentored Lila, guiding her with a gentle hand, nurturing her natural talent and her pure, untainted love for storytelling. It became clear to Alara that Lila possessed the same kind of creative spirit that the quill of creation required in its guardian. As the leaves began to turn gold and red, signaling the arrival of fall, Alara made a decision. With the consent of Seraphiel and the approval of her other companions, she introduced Lila to the quill. The young girl's initial awe turned into a thoughtful appreciation under Alara's careful instruction. Finally, on a crisp autumn morning, under the same golden light in which Alara had once written her first enchanted words, she passed the quill of creation to Lila. The ceremony was simple yet profound, attended by those who had supported Alara through her journey, including the villagers who had benefited from her guardianship. Every story has its time, and every writer their season, Alara said, her voice steady, but filled with emotion as she handed over the quill. Guard it well, write with love, and remember that with great power comes great responsibility. Lila accepted the quill with a solemn nod, understanding the magnitude of the gift and her new role. As the community cheered, Alara felt a deep, satisfying peace, knowing the quill was in capable hands. Seraphiel, Sir Cedric, and Physic stood by her side, their faces filled with pride. They had witnessed a full circle, a story of growth, challenge, and change that would continue to inspire as long as the quill wrote stories into the fabric of the world. As the celebrations faded into a quiet evening, Alara walked back to her cottage, her heart light and her spirit content. The quill's legacy was assured, and so was the legacy of its guardians, forever intertwined in the endless dance of creation and imagination.